Hi, my name is Joe Gaziano, and I'm your teacher in this class on American national government. I wanted to do this introductory video cast to give you some idea about the class and about myself. I've been teaching for 45 years. I taught in the classroom at Lewis at the Romeoville campus for 43 years. And during that time, I taught American national government from the very beginning. And it's one of my favorite classes. It's one of the easiest classes in a way in political science because it basically only covers one government, the American national government. And so it's kind of easy to handle. It's also interesting. The textbook, which we use, Democracy Under Pressure, is an easy to read book. It's written by a political scientist and a journalist, and it's just a course that no one need to fear in terms of understanding the material. It also covers the national government, which is in the news all the time, and we all know something about it, even if we don't care about the government and what it's doing. But I wanted to start out here today just talking about myself first. Um, as I said, I've taught for 43 years in the classroom and 2 years online. I live in New Mexico now. That's Jackie with me and our two dogs. We live together, Jackie and I, and the two dogs. The smaller one that that's closest to me or closest to the car there is Lotus, and the other one is the bigger one is Praja. They're both uh, dogs that we rescued. They're they've been with us for about a year and a half now, and as you can tell by looking at the picture, they're Scotties. Um, Even though I live in New Mexico, I want to say that I am close to you in terms of the internet and the phone. And if you have any problem, although I'm not on campus, if you have any problems or questions or issues of any kind, feel free to contact me either way, by email or by phone. It's um, it's still through technology a way for us to be close together. So something about the class itself. This is American National Government. It's an introductory class, meaning you don't have to have any previous background. And it covers a wide variety of things within the government. In a minute or two, we'll look at the um, systems approach, which it gives you essentially a framework into which to put all the different things that we'll cover in the government, and I'll be talking about that. But the first thing I want to say is kind of like what to do in starting this class. And the first thing I would say is look at the website at Blackboard. Um, Go through all the different buttons and make sure you understand it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. The easiest way is email, and you can do that either with my home email. I give you both of them on the website, and you can contact me by email, or if you prefer, if it's a problem, you can always call me, and then my number is there too. So um, essentially, look at the website, and like I said, if you have any kind of issue, don't hesitate to contact me. Um, so that would be the first thing. Look at the website, and then the second thing I would say is get the materials for the class. Now, the one thing you're going to need is a textbook. That's Cummings and Wise. You can get that in the bookstore. You can get it online. It comes in many different editions. It's been around for a long time. It really doesn't matter what edition you get, so you can get by on the cheap. I think the only thing that the latest edition offers is if there's some reference to a page, or page numbers or something that I talk about, it's maybe a little harder to find in a previous edition than the one I'll be using, um, which is the latest edition. What I wanted to do here was just kind of explain how the system works. Each week you're going to have four essays to write, and every other week you're going to have a short paper to write. The description of the paper is in the paper projects, and the questions we'll be discussing in our lectures. So the possibility is 10 points for each paper and 16 points for the essays, and those points are then all added up at the end, placed on a curve, and you then will have a final grade based on the points. The only thing I would say at this point would be simply to make sure that when you see your grades or you see your points for the essay questions, or you see your points for the paper, make sure that you're getting at least a sizable number of points, somewhere in the range of 10 to 15 points at least, somewhere for the questions, somewhere in the range of 7 or 8 points for the paper. And then that way you're in pretty good shape as far as a final grade is concerned. If there's any problem with that, you don't think you're getting enough points, or you see it's a real low number of points, be sure and contact me. Usually what I do is, especially in the beginning, if people are not doing well, I will contact them and explain what they need to do. As I said before, this class covers American national government. What that entails essentially is a discussion of the President, the Congress, and the Supreme Court. And then it also includes other entities, which we'll talk about in a minute when we look at the political systems approach. One thing I would say right off the bat is when you're trying to understand how the American national government works, you should understand that it's a presidency-centered government. That is, the president is the most important, the presidency, I should say, is the most important entity in the government. Congress and the Supreme Court are essentially in secondary roles these days, and we will talk about why that is the case. And so it's a form of government that really isn't described in the Constitution, but I'm jumping ahead of myself, and we'll just kind of wait until we get to that point to really discuss that. Okay, here's the political systems approach diagram that I was mentioning to you before. So essentially what you have is that in the center of the political system here would be the President, Congress, and Supreme Court. In the outside area, like the environment, what you would have in the environment would be the Constitution, both written and unwritten. And don't worry about that now. We'll talk about that when we get to the questions. What is the unwritten Constitution? Everybody knows what the written Constitution is, that the Founding Fathers put together when the country started. But there's an unwritten Constitution as well that's pretty important in trying to understand how the government works. And essentially, that's all part of the environment out here in this kind of area of the political system. Then in here, in this particular box, is the President, Congress, and Supreme Court. And over here on the input side, there's something called the inputs. And you can see that this kind of stuff that's in the diagram is also described to you in the book in the first chapter. On the input side, you have three entities. You have interest groups, public opinion, and political parties. And they do two things in the system as part of the inputs. They make demands and give supports to the institutions that are in the middle, the President, Congress, and Supreme Court. So in other words, if an interest group wants something, that's a demand. And they make it, like say on the president, they make the demands on the president during a presidential campaign by giving supports, which would be money, and telling them once they get elected what they want them to do. So you get an interest group that'll tell the president, here's what we want you to do, and in an effort to kind of make sure that the president does what they want, they will offer supports here, which would be in the form of campaign money. Then the President, Congress, and Supreme Court, which are at the middle of this diagram, they make the decisions. They decide what the policy and government's going to be, and that's what this is: decisions and policies. What goes over here, and then once the decision or policy, like you have a law like Obamacare or something like that, once that becomes law, then there's feedback. There's what's right here, feedback, which means that it's the reaction of the interest groups, political parties, and public opinion to the policies. And that generates new demands and new supports. If people don't like it, they will tell the government, we don't like this policy, let's have a different one. And if if they do like it, they'll say you're doing a good job. And the reward for the president, Congress, not so much the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court isn't elected, but especially with the president and Congress, the reward is to re-elect them. And that's basically what they're looking for. So that's the kind of context of what we will be looking at in the class. We'll be looking at the Constitution, which is out here in the environment. We'll be looking at the President, Congress, and Supreme Court. We'll be looking at interest groups, political parties, and public opinion that generate demands and supports. And then to some degree, as we talk about it throughout the lectures, we'll be looking at decisions and policies, and to some degree also, especially when we're looking at the input side and talking about the political inputters, which would be interest groups, political parties, and public opinion, we'll be talking about how they generate feedback.